When settlers came to America, they were met with huge, fertile Great Plains. They harvested abundant crops for many years, but due to their overgrazing and plowing, they depleted soil nutrients and destroyed soil structure. Then came a long drought and major topsoil loss due to wind erosion. There was nothing to hold the soil down, so the topsoil blew into the air and surrounded entire states. People wore masks, and some even died from dust pneumonia. Many people moved to other states as their farms and livelihoods dried up. In March 1935, Hugh Hammond Bennett, now known as the father of soil conservation, had an idea and took his case to lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and the dust storms followed him. No longer in doubt, the 74th Congress passed the Soil Conservation Act, signed by President Roosevelt on April 27, 1935. We learned back then, almost 100 years ago, that soil conservation is key to life on Earth. It's also important in the fight against climate change because soils hold 3 times as much carbon as we find in the atmosphere and 4 times as much as we find in plants and animals around us. It also absorbs 25% of fossil fuel emissions each year. The soil is amazing. We love it. We can do lots of things to help it too, like composting, planting native plants, and using regenerative agricultural practices.
Hey, I'm John. I'm here at my farm, Inch Acres. We're a small 5-acre farm here in the Puyallup Valley, and we're trying to do things as simply as possible and as kind to our soil and our environment as possible. So we don't use any chemicals, fertilizers, or pesticides here. We try to keep things as natural as we possibly can at all times. We try to keep as many nutrients that we produce here on our farm as we possibly can as well. We got a couple of compost piles. We compost all of our veg at the end of the season that's going bad, the vines, the leaves, everything, the cuttings from our harvests. And another thing that we try to do is to use cover crops for putting organic matter and certain nutrients back into the soil. So we'll use things like peas, members of the legume family, vetch, as ways to pull nitrogen out of the air and kind of lock it down into the soils through their roots. And then we also have a rye, like a winter rye that we grow, so that we have a grass that's like an organic matter. And then I also throw in some crimson clover because I think it's a pretty plant. I like the little red flower that comes up in the spring, but it's also a big beneficial for our bees as a pollinator. So it's one of the things that they can get at early on in the season to start helping with food for themselves and get their pollination going, and then that brings them to some of our other plants. Another way that we can help with that too is to make sure that we're not growing plants in the same spot year in and year out. So crop rotation is another big one that's important for our soils. If we were to continue to grow the same crop in the same place season after season after season, then we're making a better opportunity for pests, bugs that we don't want, any pathogens like soil-borne pathogens that might be bad for the plants. And with healthy soil comes healthy plants.
Cover crops, just the addition of different kinds of nutrients, which we are using. We're stepping into our winter part of the season, so we're getting ready to throw in our cover crop mix for the winter to get prepped for next year's season. We have been out here watching it grow, and we're so excited that it has gotten established because we really need the help with compaction. We have seen, especially in our brassica section, a soil shift and because of compaction. So this is going to become a regular practice for us now that we've been able to start earlier in the year to get it established. We're very excited. from the beginning had an orchard established. So the idea of creating habitat for our native pollinators, our native birds, native animals has been something that's been really important to Mother Earth Farm.
This particular area, we actually had chickens out here, which you can see down there now, but the chickens were out here in April, so there was fresh manure in this field in April, and then we didn't harvest anything here until September. We actually haven't even harvested the Brussels sprouts yet. So with the organic standards, you need 120 days from a fresh manure application to harvest crop. So we're staying within the bounds of the safety rules. But these are heavy feeding crops that usually get lots of organic fertilizer, but because we cover cropped this field last year and then had chickens mow down that cover crop this spring, we're actually able to grow these crops without any fertilizer application. So I feel like what we're doing is working.
So these are our Highland cows. So they eat pretty much all the grass out here. We don't want them to continue to eat it down too much further, so we're going to supplement them with hay starting about mid-October. Their hooves help to break the soil up, get water down in there, get oxygen at the root zones, and then they drop that fantastic fertilizer all over the fields for us. And then we also have egg-laying chickens, and so they'll come through, they'll scratch them up, break them up, looking for all the bugs that lay their eggs inside those cow pies. But for what we do on the small scale, I mean, our crop growth is a quarter of an acre in size. So small handheld tools, walk behind tractors, things that aren't really hugely impactful on the ground are more appropriate. So you don't have the wheel weight for compaction on the big tractors. Our fuel consumption is a lot lower, and we're able to use smaller tools more appropriately. With the cover crop, after our winter, what doesn't get killed off, we'll end up cutting it with a flail mower. And the flail mower is pretty cool because it just chops it up in small little bits and pieces. And we'll leave it on the soil to help break down and decompose into the soil, put organic matter. So it's a little kinder on the soil itself, the bottom. We don't create what they call a hard pan, a layer of hard soil that roots can't quite get through and can't get the nutrients that might be further down.
We are preparing an application essentially to have a long-term agroecological research site here that will focus on organic agriculture, diversified vegetable systems, with the idea of really reducing tillage. So we would compare systems, one that would be like a full tillage, frequent tillage, and then the other would be at every instance trying to reduce tillage as much as possible. So things like the power harrow, no-till transplanter, minimum till drill, strip tillers, those sorts of equipment that we've gotten over the years would be integral to that reduced till system. And then the no-till or the full till system would just be more traditional equipment. And then we would look at what are the long-term effects on soil health, weed populations.
I came from a world much different than agriculture. I used to work in the film business and living in Los Angeles at the time, so I didn't have a space to grow food. And it's a place where you can grow anything. So I was really sort of perplexed as to why it was so hard to grow food there. I had read a book about permaculture farming and thought it was really fascinating, and became interested in soil science and really wanted to learn how I could revitalize the soil and how I could learn how to grow my own food on a small scale, and then hopefully eventually on a larger scale, helping my community. When you have this kind of knowledge, it's something that you shouldn't hold on to. You should share it with people. We need everybody on board with this right now. We need all kinds of minds thinking about how we can do this in a way that is less harmful to the earth and more helpful to us as humans, less destructive. I hope in the future we have kids that are more and more interested in doing this kind of work.